Welcome back to part 2 of our login tutorial. What I got here is a split screen setup. The index page and the register.php page in Dreamweaver, so you can take a look at both at the same time. Today we're going to be talking about registering a user for our login. So I'm just going to click on the link that says register, and that'll bring me up to the registration form. Now let's take a look at the HTML that generated that form. The first thing we have is an include once to include a login function. So we looked at that in the first video, and that's click here. Basically it just holds the database connect information, so I don't have to retype that on every single page. The next thing I do is I start a session. For those of you who are not too familiar with sessions, they're kind of like a server-side version of a cookie. It allows you to hold information over multiple pages. You can look that up later on if it's something you're interested in. I then created a variable called token and a session variable called token, both with the same MD5 random value. And we're going to use that to check our form submit to see if it's a valid form submission. And you'll see more about that later on. And here is just the basic HTML, title of the page, the header of the body. Over here you have a div containing all this here. This little blue box you see here is the div. Div I call with an ID of regbox. And what I did is I set up the div in my CSS. Basically here is the div, regbox div. It's position absolute, so it means it's going to sit on the page exactly where I tell it to, not relative to anything else on that page. Its width, its height, its z-index, which is basically, if you think of it as a graph, height and width are up and down, left and right, and z is further away or closer to you. Border color, I set it as blue, as you can see right there. Border style, solid. It's going to start 50 pixels from the top, 15 pixels from the left. Background color a little grayish, and I centered it. I just picked those colors at random. Now back over to our reg.php. And you look at it, what I did is I started a standard form. I named the form reg form. We're going to use the method post, and it's going to be posted to a separate PHP file called reg user, which we'll look at later on in this video. The center tag to center the entire thing in the div. I then did something bad, and I laid out this, as you can see here, in a table. Tables traditionally aren't used for laying out, for doing your layout. You're supposed to do that in divs, but to make it simpler, I did it in a table. Don't worry about it. If you just want to keep it as a table, that is fine. But it's kind of bad form to do your layouts with tables as opposed to divs. Anyway, so back onto the actual form. We have a couple inputs here. The first input is obviously the person's username. It's going to be a standard text type input, and I called it user. Next is going to be the password, and it is a type password. So when I type something in here, it hides the characters. That's what the password type does. And then retype your password, which is another password input. I named it password2 just to differentiate it from the original password. Email address is a standard text input. Referral code, another standard text input, and that's going to be used for just in case you want to do some promotions or any tracking. We'll add those scripts later on in the tutorial. And you look down here, and there is a input called token, and it is a hidden, so no one will ever see it, as you don't see the token here. It's just going to get passed without the user seeing it, and it's going to pass the variable token, which I created up at the beginning of the page here. I'm just going to check it against the session token, which I also created at the same time once the form is submitted. And of course the submit button, that's basically your standard submission form, no big deal. So now we're going to go take a look at reg user, and that is where this, when you hit the submit button here, that is where it takes you to do all the calculations on the form. And you'll also notice that I don't have any form validation. I will add that in a later video with some jQuery and jQuery UI, pretty it up a bit. But for now, let's run over to reg user and see what we got going on in there. So create a file called reg user, and let's take a look at my reg user file. Okay, we're now looking at reg user.php. Now you guys can pause this at any time as I'm going through it and type out the code. So I'm just going to go through and explain to you what the code is. The standard HMTL stuff at the top there. Then in the PHP, I included my login functions, which is to connect to my database. I had to start a session because we wanted to take a look at that session variable token I created in the last page. And so what the first thing I did is I put back in the reg div box, which is this blue box here. So if I have to echo out any of the information, it'll be echoed out into this box here just to keep everything within that div. Now the very next thing I did is I checked the token passed to me through the post against the token in the session to make sure that they are the same. If they are the same, nothing happens. If they're not, the else triggers, and the header sends us back to the register.php page here and exits the script so no other code is executed. Normally you could do that with an if not. Unfortunately, the not wasn't working, so I did it with an if else as a workaround. Next, I took the variable user from the post and created a variable called user with it. I then did a MySQL real escape string to clean it up. So I'm going to be putting that variable into MySQL database, and whenever you're going to put anything into a MySQL database, it's very important that you use this MySQL real escape string function here just to clean it up so people aren't entering stuff into your database that you don't want them to. Next is the password I took from the post, and password 2, the email I took from the post to clean it up for MySQL. Here I am creating confirmation code which is going to be emailed to the user so I can confirm that this is the email of the user. And here's that referral. We'll be dealing with that later on, but that's the referral code. We're going to store it. So we did a MySQL real escape string. Next, down here, I created a reg date variable. So I'm going to hold today's date so I can store the date in which you registered. I just used the standard PHP date function. It's going to come out year 2013, month 08, date 28 in that format, the ISO format. Okay, now we're going to look at some more checking the form that was submitted. If the variable email contains nothing, in other words, they forgot to enter anything in the email, it's going to echo out, you did not enter a good email address, and echo out the link for them to go back and change it. So just to show you what that's going to look like, I'm just going to click submit over here, and you can see it's going to tell me you didn't enter a good email address. Go back, and that's going to take them back to registration. Okay, and exit on the other script below that gets executed. And here, if the post password or password 2 was not entered, the same thing is going to happen as did for the email, and it's going to exit so the rest of the code doesn't get functioned. And here we're going to check to see that password and password 2 are the same, that he typed in the same password for both. Okay. If he didn't, then same thing, we're going to send him back here. Okay. If he did, the first thing we are going to do is we're going to check our login taught database in the temp reg under the username and see if the username he entered this variable here is in the database. If it is, then that means there's someone in temp reg already trying to register that username. We can't have two of the same username, so it's going to print there's already a player with that name. Actually, I should change that to user. I don't like player. There's already a user of that name, and go back and try again. Here now it's going to check login database users table, and if there is a user with the same name as user, again it's going to tell them there's already a user there. Please go back and try again. Here you have the same thing, except it's going to check the temp reg for if that email address was used. If it is, you're going to have to try another one because you want a unique email address. And here it's going to check users to make sure that that email address again is in use. If it is, it's going to tell them the email address is in use, provide them a link to go back. So basically these 4-line sections of code here are all the same, just this is checking for the username and these two are checking for the email. Next, I took the password he entered and converted it into an MD5. So it's just a little bit of encryption. So if you look at the database, which we're going to do right now, in the users table, you can see the passwords don't make any sense. Even if I have my PHP MyAdmin opened, I can't tell what the user typed in for a password. And that's a little bit of security, and that's what the MD5 is for. Okay. Okay, now that we have the password, we are going to take all that information that the user submitted and insert it into login.reg temp table. You can see here the information in the table. Where's reg temp? Structure, there we go. Okay, you can see it's going to automatically generate this ID, which is auto increment, and then we're going to put in the user, the password, email, the referral, the column code, date, and the values we want to enter in are these variables here. The order corresponds with the order up there. So username corresponds to user, password, email with email, referral. So it's important that you put them in the correct order. MySQL query or die. So if it can't do it, it's going to come back. It's going to kill and come back saying could not register. If that's successful, we're going to send the user email. Okay, and how to do that? We're going to set a variable called to and email, which is email address, subject, what you want in the subject, what you want in the header, and basically in the message it's going to say confirmation code is here, your username, your password, your activation code is, that's the activation code we randomly generated, and here's the link to go to activate this. As you noticed here, mail to that address, that subject, that message. That's just the PHP mail to function. And then the header's going to redirect us to the location form activate form page. You have successfully registered. Check your email for the activation link. So let's see how that's going to work. So just say I want to come up here, I want to register me. Password's going to be me. Password's going to be me. Type again, me. Email, Zester at Gmail. And referral A6, I get a 5, I guess. Okay, and submit. And see the header here in the activation form. Now that is the activation form page is taken. Just says thank you for registering. Please insert the activation code that was sent to you in your email. Look at that. Let's take a look at the activationform.php. This is pretty much standard PHP. Our reg box again. Thank you, and standard, just a standard form where he has to type in the activation code was sent in his email. And we'll talk more about this in the next tutorial. I'm going to leave that here right now. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you back in tutorial part 3 where we're going to activate the user. Thank you very much. Have a great day. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to click on the like button, join my channel, or leave a comment. Thanks for watching.